I used to believe betrayal came with warning signs, shifty eyes, slippery words. But what happened to me was quiet, strategic, and devastating. My name is Ava Sinclair, and the night before my wedding, I went to bed dreaming of forever. By the next morning, the entire church was silent, for reasons no one would ever forget. It started 2 nights before the ceremony. My fiancé, Liam, had gone to stay at the hotel our guests were using. His idea. Tradition, he said. It's bad luck to see the bride. I was at my childhood home, curled up on the couch with my maid of honor, Sienna, my best friend since we were 6. We were sipping wine and giggling over old photos when my mother walked in. Don't drink too much, she said with that too sweet smile that always made me nervous. Mom had always been complicated, gorgeous, charismatic, and the kind of woman who could light up a room or drain it dry with one sharp glance. You want to look perfect for Liam, don't you? She added, brushing her fingers over my shoulder. He's going to be stunned when he sees you walk down that aisle. I smiled, tried to ignore the flicker of unease in my chest. Because it wasn't just what she said, it was the way she said it. Like Liam belonged to her, like she was the one who couldn't wait for him to see her. Sienna noticed it too. After my mom walked out, she whispered, "She's being weird, right?" I just laughed. You know how she is. She always wants attention. But deep down, something was shifting. The next day was a blur. Rehearsal, nails, last-minute florals. My phone buzzing nonstop. Liam barely responded to my messages, but I told myself it was just nerves. That night, I stayed at the estate with my mom. My dad had passed when I was 17, so it was just the 2 of us now. I tried to feel grateful for the quiet, but when I came downstairs to grab some water, I noticed the front door slightly cracked. I peeked out. A car was pulling away. I didn't recognize it at first, until I saw the bumper sticker. The same one Liam had joked about hating, the one I'd put on his car 6 months ago. My chest tightened. Why was Liam here? I tiptoed to my mother's room. Her door was closed, locked, and the light inside still on. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like hours. Then I told myself I was being crazy, that he must have dropped something off, that maybe she was asleep, and I was spiraling for no reason. But I couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, the day of my wedding, I woke up feeling sick. My stomach was in knots, my hands shook. At the salon, Sienna kept checking on me. You're pale. Are you okay? I tried to lie. Just jitters. But the moment we stepped into the church, something in me snapped. I saw Liam at the altar, smiling nervously. I saw my mother seated in the front row, looking radiant. Too radiant. And then, I saw it. A bracelet, hanging loosely on her wrist. Not hers. Mine. The one Liam had custom made for me last month with our initials engraved on the inside. He'd surprised me with it after our engagement photos. Always yours, the inscription read. I walked right up to her. Where did you get that? I whispered. She blinked slowly. You must have left it. No, I said. I never took it off. She leaned in, smiled that same sugary smile. Ava, don't cause a scene. That's when I knew. I stood there in my wedding gown, veil trembling, staring at the 2 people I loved most, and realized they had slept together. I didn't have proof, but sometimes your soul doesn't need it. Sometimes the truth is so loud, it doesn't need to be spoken. So I took a breath and walked down the aisle anyway. Not toward Liam, but toward the microphone. The silence in the bridal suite was thick. I don't remember walking back. I don't remember breathing. My dress dragged across the carpet like it belonged to someone else. The veil was still clutched in my hand like a shroud. My best friend Danielle sat on the sofa, looking up from a compact mirror, but her smile froze when she saw my face. Ashley? What happened? I shut the door. Click. And the moment it latched, I fell to my knees. The scream came out before I could stop it. Not a scream of fear, a scream of betrayal. Danielle was by my side instantly, holding me, rocking me, even as I choked out the words. I saw them, in the guest room. My mother And Adam. She pulled back like she didn't understand. Saw who? What do you mean? My mother and my fiancé. Last night wasn't cold feet. He was with her. She didn't speak. Her eyes just widened and her hand went to her mouth. I wasn't crying. I was boiling. Something inside me had broken wide open. You're sure? She whispered. You're sure it was? They didn't even try to hide it. She was in his shirt. Her makeup was smeared Danielle. I stood up shakily, the veil dropping from my hand, catching on the corner of the vanity. Danielle didn't ask the question most people would. She knew my mother. Everyone did. Lisa Carrington was known for two things: charm and control. She walked into any room like she owned the oxygen. But I never imagined she'd stoop this low, that she'd look at her own daughter's future and decide it belonged to her. And Adam. I thought I loved him. We met in college. He was charming, ambitious, polite to my family. My mother would always say, "He reminds me of the boys I used to date before I settled for your father." I thought she was just being Lisa. But now I remembered the lingering stares, the long conversations in the kitchen, the time she'd brush past him and he'd look after her like, oh my God. They weren't new. This had been going on behind my back for months, maybe longer. Danielle grabbed both my hands. Ashley, listen to me. You can walk away right now. We can cancel everything. But I shook my head. No, I whispered. No, I'm not leaving. They humiliated me in silence. I'm going to return the favor in public. Danielle stared at me. You're serious? I nodded. Help me get ready. She hesitated. Are you sure? I mean, if you just want to run, I'll drive. I'm not running, I said. I'm walking down that aisle. In this dress, with my head high. And when I say I don't, the entire church will hear exactly why. Her smile was small, but dangerous. Then let's give them a show. The church was full, packed with smiling faces, extended family, friends from work, sorority sisters, even Adam's frat brothers. My father stood at the altar, already beaming, clearly unaware of what had happened. My mother sat in the front row in a silver gown, crossing her legs, composed and elegant, like she was the queen of the hour. But she saw me the second I entered, and I saw the color drain from her face. Good. Adam was standing at the altar, tall and smug in his tux. But when his eyes met mine, something flickered. Not guilt. Fear. He knew. Maybe he thought I'd keep it a secret. Be too ashamed to speak. Maybe he thought I'd still marry him. He didn't know me at all. The music played. I walked down the aisle. Each step felt like defiance. Like a funeral march for the woman I used to be, sweet, trusting, blind. Now I saw everything. The minister began the ceremony. My voice didn't shake as I repeated the words until he got to the part. Do you, Ashley Carrington, take Adam Monroe to be your lawfully wedded husband? I looked up at Adam. His smile was just starting. And then I said, no. A collective gasp. I can't, because my fiancé slept with someone else last night. Whispers. I wasn't done. He slept with someone he's known for years. Someone who was supposed to protect me. Someone who raised me. Every head turned. Slowly. And then, Lisa stood up. Her lips parted. Her face pale. I turned to her, voice rising. Tell them, Mom. She froze. Tell them how you seduced your daughter's fiancé. How you shared a bed the night before my wedding. Tell them what kind of mother you really are. Chaos. Chairs scraping. Gasps turning into shouts. Adam trying to walk toward me, stammering something, until my father stepped between us. He didn't speak. He just turned to Lisa. And then, he walked out of the church. Lisa followed, heels clicking. Adam was right behind her. No one knew what to say. But I stood there, bouquet still in my hand, as the church went silent again. And then, I dropped the bouquet and walked away. Danielle was waiting in the vestibule, keys already in hand. Where to? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I just looked back at the church behind me, once the symbol of the happiest day of my life. Now the grave of my old illusions. Then I turned to her and said, somewhere quiet, Somewhere I can scream. I didn't sleep the night before my wedding. I didn't cry either. Something inside me had snapped past breaking and gone terrifyingly still. Instead, I spent the early morning hours walking the empty beach in my robe, letting the icy sea air sting my face while my phone buzzed with calls I didn't pick up. From my bridesmaids, from my cousins, even from my dad, who'd arrived late last night and had no idea what he'd flown into. But not from my mother, and not from my fiancé. No explanation, no apology, no denial. They weren't sorry. They were just hiding. I got back to the bridal suite at 6:30 a.m. sharp. I closed the door gently behind me, poured myself a glass of champagne, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked like a ghost of myself, but I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of what they'd done. Not of what came next. I took a deep breath and whispered, "Let's give them the show they think they're still getting." By 9 a.m., the suite was chaos. Hairstylists, makeup artists, photographers, and bridesmaids buzzed around me like bees. Only one of them noticed something was off. My maid of honor, Leah, my oldest friend since childhood, crouched next to my chair and gently held my hand. "Claire," she whispered, You're not okay." What happened? I looked into her eyes and felt the tears trying to push through. But I blinked them back and smiled. Nothing. I'm perfect. And in a way, I was. The ceremony was set for noon, in the whitewashed church down the road, overlooking the cliffs. I arrived in a vintage Rolls-Royce with my father. He kept looking at me, puzzled, nervous. "You're calm," he finally said. "Too calm." "I'm focused," I replied. He reached over and squeezed my hand. "You can back out, you know? You don't have to marry anyone if you..." But I cut him off with a soft kiss on the cheek. "I know, but I think I need to do this." The music started. The guests stood. And I walked down the aisle in a designer gown with a train so long it whispered behind me like a rumor. They all smiled. They had no idea. And when I reached the altar, there he was. Jason, looking nervous, sweaty, avoiding my eyes. And to his left, sitting in the front pew, wearing pearl earrings and my stolen lipstick, was my mother, Valerie. She smiled at me like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't gutted me with a betrayal I'd never imagined possible. I looked from him, to her, then back to him. And then I turned to the priest and said, "Before we begin, I have something to say." The stunned silence fell over the crowd. Jason blinked. "Claire, what are you doing?" I turned to face the guests. My voice was calm, even, every word sharp as broken glass. "I'd like to thank everyone for being here today, especially those who traveled from out of town. And I'm sorry to do this, but there's been a change of plans." I took a breath. There won't be a wedding today. Gasps. Whispers. A ripple of confusion. Jason stepped toward me, grabbing my arm. "What the hell are you talking about?" I smiled and pulled away. "I'm talking about how you slept with my mother. The night before our wedding." The church went dead silent. I turned and faced Valerie directly. "And you, I hope he was worth it. I really do. Because you just lost a daughter." You could hear a pin drop. Jason sputtered. "That's not. You don't have proof." I raised my phone and tapped the screen. An audio recording filled the room. The sounds of two voices. Theirs. Laughing, whispering, moaning. Every single person in that church heard it. The priest dropped his Bible. Someone in the back let out a shocked gasp. My father stood up, rage on his face, staring at his ex-wife in stunned disgust. Valerie's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Jason turned white as a sheet. And I just stood there, finally breathing. The priest stammered, "Miss Claire, what do you want us to do?" I looked at him and smiled. "Continue. Just not with the wedding." And I turned back down the aisle, past the frozen crowd, past the flowers I'd picked myself, past the life I'd almost walked into blind. The music didn't play, but I didn't need it, because every step I took was thunder, and I knew from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. I didn't sleep at all the night before my wedding. Not because of nerves, not because of excitement, but because I lay awake, playing the memory over and over like a horror film on a broken loop. My mother tangled up with my fiancé in a hotel room I had unknowingly paid for. I still wore the engagement ring he gave me. I still had the wedding dress hanging beside the bed. But the woman who would wear it today was no longer the same. She was hollowed, steel-lined, focused. Because this day would not end in vows. It would end in revelations. The morning sun was merciless. My father arrived at the bridal suite with coffee and concern in his eyes. I didn't have the heart to tell him everything. Not yet. But he knew something was wrong. Arya, you don't have to go through with this if. I'm walking down that aisle, Dad. He nodded slowly, trusting me. Then you walk in with your head high. And if anything happens, I've got your back. Those words would mean more than he knew. The church was filled. It looked like a dream I once had. 1,000 white roses lining the pews, candlelight dancing along stained glass, violins playing softly. I used to picture this moment since I was a girl, but not like this. Not with a lie like a noose wrapped around my neck. My bridesmaids helped me into the dress. They didn't know. No one did. Not even my sister, who had flown in from Seattle just to stand by me. But as I looked at myself in the mirror, veil perfectly placed, dress cascading like a waterfall, I whispered, "This isn't for him anymore." And I meant it. I walked down the aisle slowly. Each step was thunder inside my chest. Every pair of eyes turned toward me, and I could feel the weight of expectation in the air. I saw Caleb, my fiancé, waiting at the altar in his navy tux, hands folded neatly. Beside him stood his best man, oblivious. And just to the left, my mother, in her silver gown, hair perfectly styled, smiling, as if she hadn't shattered my entire world a few hours ago, as if she were proud. I held her gaze. I didn't flinch, because I wasn't just walking toward a wedding. I was walking toward war. We reached the altar. Caleb reached for my hands. I gave them to him. The priest began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. But I wasn't listening. I was watching Caleb's face, studying the small twitch in his left brow, the way his thumb traced lazy circles on my knuckle. I could almost hear him rehearsing his lies in his head. He had no idea what was coming. When it was time for the vows, he went first. He spoke with practiced charm, even tearing up slightly for effect. "Arya, from the moment I met you, I knew you were different. You're my rock, my joy, my home." He kept going. My stomach turned. And when it was my turn, I stepped slightly forward and removed the veil. I didn't smile. "Caleb," I began. I had a whole speech written. But last night, it got rewritten for me. The church went still. "I want to thank you for showing me the truth before I made the biggest mistake of my life." His eyes flickered with confusion. My mother shifted in her seat. I continued, calm, dead calm. I thought I was marrying someone who loved me. But instead, I discovered that the man I was about to marry was too busy sleeping with my mother in a hotel room less than 24 hours ago. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a tidal wave. Caleb's mouth fell open. My mother froze, pale as porcelain. I didn't stop. And just in case you think I'm lying, I turned to the projector screen that had been set up for a sweet montage video of our childhoods and love story. I clicked the remote. Instead of pictures of our first date, there were surveillance clips. Clear as day. The hotel hallway. Caleb entering. Moments later, my mother, the timestamp. The door closing behind them. And later, my mother leaving, hair messy. Caleb in his boxers at the door. People were gasping, whispering. Some started crying. I turned back to them both. "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed this entire family. And you tried to pretend nothing happened." I looked directly at my mother now. "Did you ever love me? Or was I just competition to you?" She couldn't answer. Her hands trembled in her lap. Her husband, my stepfather, was glaring at her like she was a stranger. My sister had her hands over her mouth. And then, Caleb tried to speak. Arya, wait, let me explain. No, I cut him off. You don't get to explain. You had your chance. I took off the ring, held it in the air for everyone to see. This is what betrayal looks like when it's dressed up in a tux. And I dropped it. The sound echoed like thunder on marble. Then I turned to the guests. I know this isn't the wedding you came for, but I think it's the truth you needed to see. I walked out, head high, veil trailing behind me like a ghost of the life I had just buried. But I was free. I didn't cry. Not yet. Because the war wasn't over. But the silence that followed me out of that church. It said everything I needed it to say. I didn't sleep the night after the wedding that never was. Not because of sadness, but because I was rebuilding myself, brick by brick, through the silence. By morning, I was packed. I left my phone behind. The dress, the photos, everything. I booked a flight to Denver. My cousin lived there, and for a while, I just needed to be someone else. Someone who wasn't the girl whose mother slept with her fence. For weeks, I didn't speak to either of them. Not even when they started posting photos together. Engagement photos. Yes, they got engaged. My mother and Jason. Posing by the lake with wine glasses and smug smiles, like they hadn't left a scorched earth behind them. One caption read, "Sometimes love shows up when you least expect it." I almost laughed. They expected applause. They got silence. But silence can be powerful. Because while they were posting, I was plotting. Not for revenge, but for restoration. I was going to reclaim everything they thought they took from me. I applied to grad school. I started therapy. And one night, after months of disappearing into my own shadow, I lit a candle and wrote one final letter. To my mom. "You once told me I was your greatest joy. Then you took a match to that joy and set it on fire. I don't hate you, but I don't belong to you anymore. You lost the right to my love the moment you used it against me. So consider this your final blessing from me. I forgive you, but I am done with you." I mailed it with no return address. Weeks passed. Then one day, I got a letter back, forwarded from my old apartment. No envelope. Just a folded piece of paper in my mother's shaky handwriting. I can't look in the mirror anymore. I lost a daughter trying to feel young again. I've never hated myself more. I hope you find peace, even if I never do. I folded it quietly and threw it into the fireplace. A year passed. I moved cities, started teaching writing workshops, spoke at women's conferences about betrayal, grief, and boundaries. One day, I was invited to speak at a church. Not the same one I walked out of on my wedding day, but close. When I got on stage, something unexpected happened. A woman in the audience stood up and started crying. Then another, and another. It was like the dam had broken for all of them. After my talk, one came up to me and whispered, "You said what I was too afraid to say when my own mother betrayed me. You saved something in me today." That's when I realized. They didn't destroy me. They delivered me into my real purpose. Last month, I got married to someone kind, quiet, unimpressed by drama and loud with loyalty. We had a small wedding, 10 guests. No dress rehearsal, no big announcements, just vows, real ones. I wore a soft ivory dress with no makeup and no shoes. And as I stood across from the man who saw every scar and still chose me, I finally felt free. My mother wasn't there. Jason wasn't either. I don't even know where they are now. But sometimes, that's the blessing. When people show you what they're capable of, believe them. Then let them go. Not out of bitterness, but because your peace matters more than your history. I didn't get the wedding I planned, but I got the life I deserved. And that silenced more than a church. It silenced everything that ever told me I wasn't enough. Because I am. And I always was.